Hey guys, how's it going? This is BillyEatWorld, and today we're going to be taking a look at my top 5 PDWs. PDW stands for Personal Defense Weapon, which basically means that they're small concealable weapons used for taking out infantry in close quarters. In BF4, the PDWs are class specific to the Engineer class, which many people think was a mistake on the part of DICE, as they were previously all kit weapons. Unfortunately, PDWs don't fit as well as they could into Battlefield 4 or into military groups in the real world, because they're fairly limited in what they can do, and because in a lot of cases their role can be filled just as well by an assault carbine. I've said many times in previous videos how I think that the PDWs are some of the less effective weapons available, but at the end of the day, they still are some of the best close quarters weapons in the game, and there are a few standout guns in the class. This list is the top 5 PDWs that I think are either the most effective or enjoyable to play with, but remember that as always, this is just my opinion. You might have a different list, so what I want you guys to do is let me know what your top 5 is in the comment section below, or let me know what you'd change about my list. But anyway, to kick off at number 5 is the ASVAL. The ASVAL was probably my favourite gun in Battlefield 3 because it was such a beast at long range. In BF4, DICE have made the ASVAL the complete opposite of what it was in BF3, giving it a 900 RPM rate of fire and 33 max damage, making it the highest DPS weapon in the game at close range. Its massive damage output is balanced by a fairly decent kick, a steep damage drop-off and a 21 round capacity, so at mid to long range or when up against more than one enemy, it's much less effective. The ASVAL also has an integral suppressor, which isn't a bad attachment for this gun, but as a result it has a slow muzzle velocity, which means that it's only really useful in a close range stealth loadout. I would have liked to have placed this gun a little higher on my list, because it is a good gun, but unfortunately it's just too unique to be truly exceptional. Hopefully in future Battlefield games it returns to its BF3 long range role, because I honestly preferred it in that game a lot more. So coming in at number 4 is the CZ3A1. The CZ is another massive damage output PDW like the ASVAL, with a 1000 RPM rate of fire and 25 max damage. This brings it up to the damage output of the FAMAS, but unlike the FAMAS, it has a standard 31 round capacity, better hipfire and a faster reload. Being a PDW though, it unfortunately also has a very steep damage drop off, and combined with a decent kick, it's not really effective at mid to long range. Unlike a lot of PDWs, you can actually customize all of the attachments on the CZ, but because of its kick, you're sort of forced into using the attachments that control recoil, or you're forced into missing a lot of shots. At times, this can make it a frustrating gun to use, but ultimately that's the price that you pay for a gun that fires at 1000 RPM. Something a lot of people don't realise about the CZ is that its 3-round burst mode is actually surprisingly effective at tightening up the spread of the weapon and controlling ammo usage. On larger maps, this can really help you take out longer range targets, but all in all though, the CZ really only has an advantage in TDM and domination, which is also where you're likely to come up against other PDWs and shotguns. So next on my list, at number 3, is a recent addition to my favourite PDWs, the SR2. The SR2 is one of those guns that just seems to work. Of all the PDWs on this list, this is by far one of the more enjoyable to use, because it's not only deadly at close range, it's also a lot more stable than the CZ or the VAL. The SR2 has a 900 RPM rate of fire and 26 max damage, which means that in close quarters it hits harder than an AEK, but it's also much more accurate when on the move and when firing from the hip. Like most PDWs though, it's got a pretty steep damage drop off and its standing accuracy isn't that great, so although this gun will do a little bit better than most at mid-range, it's still a CQB weapon. It has a standard 31 round capacity and an integral vertical grip, which is probably the best grip for this gun, but it kind of sucks that you don't have the option to customize this attachment slot if you don't want it. It's unfortunately also held back by a fairly slow reload and a fairly slow muzzle velocity, but all in all, it is a fun gun to use and well worth 3rd place on this list. So coming in at number 2 is one of the most iconic PDWs in the world, the P90. The P90 is actually pretty unique among the PDWs in BF4, but unlike the VAL, it's not so crazy that it's difficult to use. It fires at 900 RPM and deals a max damage of 21, which gives it a DPS comparable to an assault rifle firing around 750 RPM. The benefit the P90 has over a slower firing AR though is that it has a 51 round capacity, which means that you can literally shower your enemies in bullets. This is especially handy if you like to fire on the move or hip fire, and coincidentally the P90 also has the best hip fire accuracy of any weapon in the game and a better than average moving ADS. The P90's mobility is due to the fact that it's a bullpup weapon, but this unfortunately also means it's balanced by a slow reload and a nerfed standing ADS. For players who like hipfire only, the P90 is the gun for you, but for those of you who like a little more accuracy, you might want to give this a miss. And finally, at number 1 of my top 5 is none other than the PDWR. Many people ask, why bother using a PDW when you can use a carbine? Well, why bother using a carbine when the PDWR has the best of both worlds? The PDWR is the favourite PDW of many players because it has the same damage model of a carbine, but the mobility of a PDW. It only fires at an average 750 RPM, and being a bullpup it's not terribly accurate when standing, but it makes up for this with a better than average moving ADS and hipfire accuracy as good as the P90. In fact, this gun is very similar to the P90 because when you work out the damage of both weapons in close range, they're almost identical. At long range though, the PDWR hits a fair bit harder, so it ends up being the better all-round weapon and it's much better for larger maps. The PDWR is also a great choice for new players because it has a good moving ADS spread, a standard 31 round capacity and a very controllable recoil pattern. The only issue with the PDWR is that being a bullpup, it has a slow reload which can get you killed from time to time. All in all though, I think this is a minor issue in a pretty outstanding all-round weapon, which in my opinion easily takes the crown of best PDW in the game. But anyway, that just about wraps up my top 5, so feel free to let me know what you think in the comments below, and don't forget to let me know what your top 5 is. As always, if you like what you see, please remember to like, comment and subscribe, and if you haven't already, please check out all my other Battlefield 4 videos. I've got them all linked in a playlist in the description below. But until next time, see you later and have a good one.